All right, everyone, I want to talk to you guys about America leaving Afghanistan and how it's going to have serious geopolitical consequences. Because Turkey wants to maintain a military force within Afghanistan. It wants to maintain a military presence in Afghanistan. And they are doing so in the name of keeping and maintaining regional stability against the Taliban. Now, there has been a lot of talk about the rise of the Taliban and how the Taliban is going to rise again in order to fill up the power vacuum left by the United States, and how the Taliban is going to attack the Afghan military. Now, I am not going to deny that this is going to happen. But what I will say is that the rise of the Taliban would provide the second most armed country of NATO, Turkey, the pretense, the justification to expand its military presence within Afghanistan. Because as of now, Turkey only has several hundred soldiers in Afghanistan, and they are there only to protect the airport that leads to Kabul. It's the main or major airport in Afghanistan. And I believe there are around 500 Turkish troops in Afghanistan right now. But since America is leaving, and Turkey would be the only stabilizing force for NATO within Afghanistan, essentially being a proxy for the United States, Turkey is going to demand to have more troops in Afghanistan. They're going to say, well, we have the Taliban, they're killing people, they're causing havoc, they are destabilizing the region. We now have the responsibility to put more troops on the ground. And you are going to have lots and lots and lots of Turkish troops in Afghanistan. And it's going to be done under the pretext of maintaining stability in the region. But let's be honest, Turkey has made these sorts of excuses for entering Iraq, for entering Syria. And I remember, after Obama won the second time, I remember the next day I wrote an article stating that Turkey is going to be seen as the stabilizing force in Syria, and NATO is going to embrace Turkey's military presence in Syria. And, it didn't really take a genius to make that prediction. And it happened. It happened. Turkey has used the presence of ISIS and also the presence of Kurdish militants in Syria and Iraq to justify military involvement in those countries. And you can make a similar comparison between what happened in Iraq after the Americans left and what's going to happen in Afghanistan after the Americans complete their withdrawing from that country. When the Americans left Iraq, we all know what happened. A blender of slaughter and bloodshed erupted. And you had the rise of ISIS. And everyone in the world was talking about ISIS. ISIS was the biggest story ever. It was so big, I remember, and this actually did happen many, many times, I remember from the years 2014 all the way up into the year 2016, 2017, any post I did about ISIS or Islamic terrorism got at least, and my website alone, at least tens of thousands of views. And that was just for one post about ISIS or Islamic terrorism in the Levant, Syria and Iraq. It was the biggest story in media. ISIS was huge. But what did the presence of ISIS provide? The presence of ISIS provided the opportunity for superpowers, or I should say major regional powers like Turkey, to enter Syria and Iraq. It also gave the opportunity to a global power like Russia to enter Syria and Iraq. And for a long time now, there has been this ongoing war between Turkey and Russia within Syria. And I understand, it's a proxy war, but there have been cases, numerous cases, where Turkish and Russian soldiers have killed each other. And there were many, many deaths amongst Turkish soldiers by Russian firepower, Russian aerial bombings. So there really is a conflict going on, albeit it's not a full-out conflict, but nonetheless, it's still a conflict between Turkey and Russia. And there has been a lot of diplomacy between the two countries, but eventually, just as in World War I, and many times before that, there is going to be eventually a war between the two. Now, if the Taliban rises again to spark its reign of terror, to revive its reign of terror, which is more than likely what's going to take place, Turkey has the biggest opportunity at that point to expand its military presence, because the Turks are going to argue NATO isn't really helping us, America isn't going to send troops, or they're going to send little to no troops to help us. We need to do the job ourselves, and they're going to expand its military presence. They're going to deploy more troops into Afghanistan. Now, there is another interesting point that I want to bring about in this video, and really no one is talking about this, and that is how what we have been witnessing within recent years is really the revival of Turkish empire. And you're seeing Turkey shoring up its support, consolidating its power, expanding its geopolitical leverage in the Middle East and in the South Caucasus. You see Turkey having a major presence in Libya. I remember you had the Russian proxy fighting against the government of national accord, which has been the government backed by most of the world, backed internationally. And the government of national accord was losing to Russia's Libyan proxies until Turkey showed up. And Turkey provided training. Turkey provided also the most important factor in modern warfare, at least in this case, and that was drones. Turkey provided drones. And once Turkey got involved, the government of national accord started retaking substantial amounts of territory, huge swaths of territory. Turkey has been heavily involved in Syria. I mean, what happened when America just relinquished its control over Syria? What happened? Remember what happened a number of years ago? Trump said, we've had enough of dealing with Syria. It's time for somebody else to take care of Syria. And he said something about, this sand, this blood-soaked land or whatever. We're tired of dealing with it. Well, who was that somebody? Who was that somebody else? It was Turkey. Because remember, Mike Pompeo was negotiating with the Turks, and they were talking about the roadmap to stability in Syria or whatever. And what happened? Turkey took over northern Syria. He took over Syria. Not all of Syria, but a huge chunk of the northern part of Syria. And in the area of Syria where you have a Turkish military presence, you have Turkish schools in operation. And this is the craziest part of it all, you literally have people no longer using Syrian currency. You have people using the Turkish lira. So the Turkish currency is now being used in northern Syria. That's a military takeover. That's like America taking over a small island and they're saying, hey, you're not going to use your coins to buy things. You got to use the US dollar. I mean, that's a takeover. So Turkey is occupying a huge chunk of Syria. That's what happened after America let go of its control, let go of its interventionist policy in Syria. And what happened in Iraq once the Americans left? The rise of ISIS. It gave the opportunity for Turkey to enter Iraq. What happened when we got rid of Gaddafi? Civil war. It gave the opportunity for Turkey to enter. What's going to happen when America leaves Afghanistan? You're going to see the rise of the Taliban or some other Islamic terrorist organization. And because the Turks more than likely are going to be the only force there, because that's what's been talked about for a while now, the Turks are going to say, hey, we have to need we're going to need more troops. Another very interesting thing is how Turkey wants to join forces with Pakistani and Hungarian troops. Now, Pakistan is Saudi Arabia's biggest Islamic ally. But who's Saudi Arabia's biggest enemy, or at least one of Saudi Arabia's biggest enemies? Turkey. Now, Iran is a pretty big enemy of Saudi Arabia, and if in the future Iran is just going to nuke Saudi Arabia, but Turkey is also an enemy of Saudi Arabia. The Ottoman Empire controlled the Arabs for a long time, and then the Arabs fought back with the help of the British, and they threw the Ottomans out. So the Turks have never forgotten this. And the way I see this is Turkey wants to grab Saudi Arabia's biggest Islamic ally, Pakistan, closer to its side in order to further isolate Saudi Arabia. And another thing that's interesting about this is how Turkey wants to join forces with Hungarian troops in Afghanistan. Well, this brings me back to the Great War of the early 20th century, World War I. What happened in World War I? The Turks had an alliance, the Ottoman Empire had an alliance with the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And when we talk about the Austro-Hungarian Empire, we usually just talk about the Austrian part. We don't talk about the Magyars. The Magyars who ruled over Hungary and who had really been the co-rulers of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And Hungarians see themselves as Turkic people. That's why they call themselves Hungarians. They see themselves as Huns because that country was invaded by the Huns. Even if you look at the Hungarian language, I mean, it sounds very close to Persian, and that's because in ancient times there was a lot of Iranian influence in that area. A lot of Iranian farmers, nomads, not really nomads, but really agriculturalists, Iranian agriculturalists settled there thousands of years ago. That's a different subject, though. Turkey and Hungary have been very close, which is ironic. I mean, it seems ironic, right, to the superficial eye, because since 2014, 2015, Hungary was the biggest voice in Europe against the refugee crisis, against the refugees coming into Europe. And who helped start the refugee crisis? It was Turkey that's helped start it. So Turkey basically said, hey, you Europeans, you Western Europeans, you want us, Turks, to take care of all these refugees, but we don't have the capacity to do it. So we're basically going to put a huge chunk of the burden on you guys, and we're going to release hundreds of thousands of refugees into Europe. That's what happened. Turkey and Germany helped. They were the ones who started the refugee crisis. At least they were a huge factor in it. I mean, the Iraq War, at the end of the day, is what caused the refugee crisis. But in 2015, the refugee crisis was started by the Germans and the Turks. And Viktor Orban, Prime Minister of Hungary, said no, to hell with these refugees. But it just so happens that Viktor Orban is a pan-Turkist. He's a pan-Turanianist. He believes that the Hungarians and the Turks and Central Asians and Japanese people, that we all share a common ethnic identity called Turkic. And the Hungarian military, very few people are talking about this, but the Hungarian military has been revamping itself with the help of Turkey. And it was just a few days ago that Turkey sent in a huge amount of military supplies into Hungary. And this is actually part of a plan that has been going on. Well, that's been really years in the making. It's been planned on for years. And that is the revamping of the Hungarian military with the help of Turkey. So Turkey has been refortifying, has been strengthening the Hungarian military. And now Turkey is telling the Hungarians, we want your troops with our troops in Afghanistan. Now, I'm going to help tie all of this together. But Turkey wants to start its own NATO. At the end of the day, this is what it's about, right? Well, really, at the end of the day, it's about starting empire. But this takes time, right? You can't just start an empire, especially with the United States around. But the United States is slowly relinquishing its power. The United States is slowly withdrawing itself from the world. We are going back into isolationism. And this is something that the CIA knows about, right? The American government, I mean, really the deep state, as some of you guys call it, knows what's taking place and isn't naive to this reality. The American intelligence understands this. I did a video about this not too long ago, but the CIA did a report, and U.S. intelligence did a report not too long ago. It was called Global Trends 2040. You can look this up. And in this report, it talks about what to expect for the 2040s, the decade of the 40s. And it talks about how by the 40s, not the 1940s, the 2040s, although they're going to be similar, by the 40s, we're going to see America no longer running the world. You're going to have different blocks of power running different parts of the world. You're going to have a European bloc ran by the Germans. Now, this intelligence report doesn't say by the Germans, but it's quite obvious that is what it's going to be. It also talked about Turkey and how countries like Turkey, and it does specify Turkey, will begin to pursue filling up power vacuums left by the United States. This is what the report says. Power vacuums. That's what's happening in Afghanistan. You have the United States leaving Afghanistan. It's going to leave a power vacuum. Turkey is the only NATO force volunteering itself to fill in that power vacuum. And the Americans are going to allow it because Turkey has been seen as a force of stability in the Middle East. And because the Afghans are Muslim, the Turks are Muslim, well, why not have the most powerful country in the Islamic world do the job for us? It's a lot easier. So Hungary is now being asked by the Turks to join forces with the Turkish military in Afghanistan. Turkey, in trying to create its own NATO, is going to join up with countries that are similar to it religiously and ethnically. This is why Turkey leads, and I'm going to read this to you guys, the Cooperation Council of the Turkic-speaking states. Basically, all Turkic countries united together under Ankara. The short label for this confederacy is the Turkic Council. The secretary of the Turkic Council is the government of Hungary. Why would Hungary be involved in the Turkic Council? Because the Hungarians are ethnically a Turkic people, similar to people in Turkey. Turkey wasn't always called Turkey. It wasn't called Turkey until the end of World War I. Before that, it was called Anatolia. Even the Turks called it Anatolia. Just as Istanbul wasn't called Istanbul until the end of World War I, until after World War I. Before that, it was called Constantinople. Even the Muslims called it Constantinople. And now they call themselves Turkey. We're Turkey. We're the land of the Turks. But originally, it was a country of Indo-Europeans and Greeks who were Hellenized through the Greek Orthodox Church, but then they were Turkified by Turkish invaders, Muslim Turkish invaders, who eventually just Turkified the whole country, the whole area. Hungary is similar in the sense that its original inhabitants were Indo-Europeans, and they were invaded by Huns, and they got Hunified, hence why they call themselves Hungarian. So they have similar histories. And what we are seeing is the rise of the Turkish Empire, but we're also seeing the revival of history. Look at the recent conflict that took place in the South Caucasus between the Azeris and the Armenians. The Turks provided the drones to the Azeris, enabling the Azeris to defeat the Armenians. And then now, there's a peace deal, but the peace deal was brokered by the Russians. Part of the deal was to have a corridor built between mainland Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan, which is really the continuation of Azerbaijan, but it's not part of the border with Azerbaijan. It does not border with Azerbaijan. It borders with Armenia, kind of like how Alaska doesn't directly border with the United States. It's connected to Canada. It's borders with Canada, but it's still America. Well, they want to build a corridor between Nakhchivan and Azerbaijan, and that corridor has to go through Armenia. Because Azerbaijan is really a continuation of Turkish power, it's an extension of Turkish power. The Azeris consider themselves Turks. And because Azerbaijan is right on the coast of the Black Sea, which is, and it's right across Central Asia, these Turkic countries. Turkey now has a direct passageway from Azerbaijan right into the Black Sea, and therefore right into Central Asia. And what else is a part of Central Asia? What else is a part of Central Asia? Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a part of Central Asia. So Turkey wants to control these Turkic countries of Central Asia. Afghanistan is part of Central Asia. It's not that difficult to put one and one together as to what's happening. Turkey wants to expand its global power. That's what this is. We saw it in Syria. We've been seeing it in Syria, Iraq. We've been seeing it in Libya. We're now seeing it in the South Caucasus. You're about to see it in Central Asia. That's what this is about. So America leaving Afghanistan, it's going to lead to the advancement of Turkish power, Turkish hegemony, the expansion of Turkish hegemony. So anyway, that's what I got to say. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.